Bloodsteel, the coveted ore that imparts magical properties to the person that owns it. Should we go mine it? Yes! What are we waiting for? Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we are taking a look at Dragon's Rage, aka the Knights of Bloodsteel. Yes, this is a curious beast, and I'm not just talking about the dragon. This was originally released in 2012. Well, I say originally released because it was kind of repackaged as Dragon's Rage because it was the Knights of the Bloodsteel that was released in 2009. It's actually a TV movie. It's directed by Philip Spink, and I wanted something different, so I did the Amazon lucky dip. Went onto Amazon, just looked through fantasy covers, saw the words dragon and rage, well, dragons and rage, and also a dragon and its rage, and thought, yes, that's the one for me. So, was I right to choose the Amazon lucky dip? Let's find out. So just what is the setup of Dragon's Rage? Well, Bloodsteel, that's the key to it all. It is a precious ore that imparts potent magical abilities for all that mine it. So obviously, most people want that, don't they? Who wouldn't want magical properties imparted to them? So most people are trying to sort of get hold of this Bloodsteel. The problem is, of course there's a problem, Bloodsteel is very rare. So if you do mine it, and there does seem to be quite a fair consensus that anybody can just go along and mine it, so that's quite democratic, but it is quite tricky to get out of the ground, and you know, it's proper mining, so it can be potentially dangerous. But there is a magical crucible, which is the source of Bloodsteel. So the race is on to find this magical crucible, and it's become, because that is the source of Bloodsteel. So if you have that, you are all powerful. You don't have to go and mine it. It's just there. It's this source of Bloodsteel. So the desire for untold wealth and power has drawn all the types of humans, of elves, of dwarfs and goblins and all sorts of races. And obviously there is an evil warlord named Dragon Eye. Why else? You'd have to be evil, wouldn't you, with a name like that? And he wants it for himself, mainly to dominate the world, but he's got a sick son. Yeah, bless him. He's got a sick son, and he wants to he feels like he can heal his sick son and heir, because obviously, if you're going to create an evil empire and be dominant over the world, you want to pass that on, don't you? You know, you want to pass your job, your profession on to your kids. He wants to pass it on to his heir, but the heir is sick, so he thinks, I know, I'm going to cure my son to ensure the lineage, to ensure that his family is dominant and enslaving the world forevermore. What are the themes? The themes, fellowship. Oh yes, just like Lord of the Rings, there is a fellowship that runs through this. Strangers bound together for a common cause, standing for good against evil. And this one is pretty simple. Obviously, if you've got a group of strangers that are bound together on a common cause, they're not all necessarily going to agree with each other. There's argy-bargy along the way. Different viewpoints, different values. Some, are more morally good than others. Some will, be blatant about it and out bicker with other ones and argue, and it gets a bit testy at times. But nevertheless, they are a fellowship. They realise that in order to, achieve their quest, they need to band together and actually, work as one. There is also the theme of desire. The desire for something that will dramatically change your life. The question is, what would you do in order to get it? Is the desire that strong that you would maybe do things you wouldn't ordinarily do? Maybe you would cross that moral line. Maybe you would steal. Maybe you would even murder for something that you really, really desire. So maybe this desire isn't particularly healthy. It can be healthy because, if you desire something, you would set out, that's an ambition, an achievement. but you've got to be careful it doesn't corrupt you. So you've got to, it does explore that whole issue of does the end justify the means? It tests your moral code. So desire is a theme that runs through this. Now, there could be more themes, to be honest, but I just couldn't care. I couldn't care about this. It was such a poor film, and maybe it's because it was a TV movie. But I think that's a disservice to say that all TV films are bad, because that's certainly not the case nowadays. There's some cracking, and this was a 2-part series, like one of those mini-series. There's been some great mini-series in the past, The Pillars of the Earth, which I know isn't strictly fantasy. There's a slight fantasy twist if you believe one of the characters is a witch, but, Pillars of the Earth was brilliant. There has been some other great little mini-series. There's even been some great TV series. Obviously, granted, they've got more hours to explore everything. Like Breaking Bad, there's great non-fantasy TV series out there. But there's obviously great fantasy TV series out there, like Game of Thrones. So what are they playing at? To me, there was so much of this was wrong that I just lost interest. It was flat, it was dull, the pacing was flat, there was no tension. The acting, oh dear, lordy lord, the acting was terrible. It was flat, it was just so basic. And the main woman, forgive me, I don't even think I remember the name, so I can't even forget it, but she was terrible. She's just plodding along. There's no emotion. It was so unbelievable. Guess who turns up? Christopher Lloyd. Yes, that Christopher Lloyd of Back to the Future and other such good films. He's a cracking actor. He is about the only one that you think, I believe what you're doing, and he plays an elf. So you could just argue, watch this just to see Christopher Lloyd as an elf. But even that isn't enough, really, to be honest. It's not even pushed into that it's so terrible, it's good, it's so bad, it's bad, because you're watching it because it's so bad. It doesn't even have that entertainment value for it. The storyline is so cliched, it's basically a really poor person's Lord of the Rings. But even then, it's like, surely then, it's so derivative and cliched, it's cliched, surely, because you've seen it, time and time again. Surely as a writer, you would sit down and go, right, well, let's just change this and change that and change that. And then instantly, just by making a few changes, you've got a different story. You've got maybe something that's slightly more original. Do something with it. Don't just take all the cliches and then put them in there thinking, that's a fantasy film, isn't it? That's what fantasy people love, we'll put that in it. It doesn't work like that. You gotta do better. You gotta come up with something original. You could, you got a dwarf in it. All right, well maybe this particular dwarf doesn't like going underground, doesn't like precious metals, doesn't like to be mining for gold. Isn't interested in war. Yeah, maybe he's got a conflict going on. To be fair, there is one character that actually is slightly is interesting, but they don't push it enough. It's not enough. What I wanted was maybe to focus on that character and then tell his story, because it was an interesting story. It was a different story. The special effects were terrible. There's money spent on this, but and it's 2012. It's not like this was done in the 70s where you kind of go, okay, special effects were of that standard. Some of the special effects in the Dark Crystal, which was done in the 80s, are better than this. It just really had that whole cheesy... It feels like it was made in the 80s when there were, granted, some bad fantasy films made, but you can kind of forgive them because the special effects weren't brilliant. And so if you've got dodgy special effects, that can break an illusion. And obviously if you're trying to create a character, especially the dragon, then, you're going to... It's going to just break that illusion, because you need things to be real. If you're going to believe in a character, if you're going to believe in a creature, it needs to look and act and feel like it's real. You take when they first did the Incredible Hulk film, and it was purely CGI. It just didn't work. It was too bouncy, and therefore it just big crack down the believability of what they were trying to do with that film. And it's the same here. The characters, they're all one-dimensional. They're cliched. It's just so cheesy. I don't believe any of them at all. The pacing, as I say, is terrible. It's flat. It just goes all like that. There's no tension built. The whole look of the film is very clean. It's too clean. You know, if you're in a marketplace, make it look messy. Make it look, you know, I know, but people's teeth were too clean. It just had that air. If you want to see medieval times, I know this isn't if I could say strictly speaking, if I can speak, I know it's not meant to be medieval as such, but a lot of this type of fantasy is based on the medieval premise in the medieval world. So therefore we've got a certain expectation, and we know that it wasn't, you know, pristine. We know that things looked lived in, looked worn. You know, there's a great film that does that, which is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Yeah, I know, Monty Python, but they've made it look dirty. They've made it look reality and gritty. And so therefore you instantly buy into it because you feel like it's real. They don't do that. To be fair, some of the architecture in this is really beautiful. Some of the scenery is really beautiful. But that's it. And that's not enough to sustain. It's an hour and a half each part. I mean, luckily on the DVD it is part 1 and part 2. And I then did go and read some reviews on Amazon. And yes, a lot of people said, yeah, don't watch this. I bailed out. So when I, you know, bought this, I didn't want to read the reviews because I don't want to be influenced by them. And you know, it's nice sometimes to not know totally anything about film, whether it's even good or bad. And you know, it is good sometimes to watch bad films because then it reminds you of what something is good. You know, when you see a good film, it's like, yes, that's why it's good. It's not enough just to make it look pretty. It has to have substance, and it doesn't. But also, not only that, if you're going to do it, I should have been warned when I got it through, when I opened it from Amazon. Look at this. I don't know if you can see that close up, but Dragon's Rage. There's no apostrophe in the dragons. Yeah? So are there many dragons that are raging? I don't think so. There certainly is only one dragon in the actual story. So again, it's just attention to detail like that. And that's a cover. That's not like just a little bit on the back. And then you think, oh, maybe they don't mean to have the apostrophe. No, on the back, there's an apostrophe in it. So it's just little things like that. There's certain quality that you want. Anyway, so as I say, you know, also on the back, I just point out, it says on the back of the DVD, it says, Dragon's Rage is the standout fantasy film of the year. Well, first of all, you've got to ask, well, which year? Because it was released on telly in 2009 and then packaged up and sold as a DVD, I believe, in 2012. Well, let's have a look then, shall we? Let's back up that claim. 2009, we had Harry Potter and the Half-Prince Blood. Yeah, the Half-Blood Prince, I should say. We had Up, we had Coraline, and we had 9. Now, I've done a review of 9. Go check that out. It's a fantastic film. So all 4 of those films are much better than this. In 2012, what do we have? We had The Hobbit, The Unexpected Journey. We had Brave. We had Paranormal. We had Thal, if that's how you pronounce it, which I've done a review of that one. So, yeah, of course I wouldn't know how to pronounce it. But we've done Thal. Those are all much better films. So get your marketing right as well. Don't just, you know, put that on the back of the DVD just to sell a few copies. It's not Dragon's Rage, it's Ken's Rage. This is sloppy fantasy filmmaking. Stop it. Stop it right now. We know about fantasy. We deserve better. And I would say this, if it was any genre, you've got to have decent characters, you've got to have decent storyline. At least try something different, even if it doesn't quite work. Then at least I'm happy by going, oh, well, yeah, you know, it was an original story, but it didn't quite work. No, it wasn't even that. So stop doing fantasy wrong. It's not good enough just to be cliche. Just go, this is, you know, let's pick all of this and then put it in, and yeah. It doesn't feel like they cared enough about this film. So, you know, that is it. I would say it's not even bad enough to see it. Don't see it. Don't support bad fantasy. Rant over. Thank you so much for watching. Yes, Dragon's Rage. No. Just no. But we have reviewed some very, very, very good films. so check those out on our YouTube channel. We've created playlists, so we've got fantasy film playlist, we've got fantasy books playlist, and we've also got fantasy board game playlist as well. But we've also got some other stuff on there, so check that out. There's a plethora of videos that you can watch. We've got over 400 episodes, so check them out. Yeah. And don't just take my word for it, read the comments. We get lovely comments. So thank you to everyone so far that has subscribed. Click the little bell notification and you will get notified every time a video of ours goes out. So thank you once again for watching, but remember to keep it unreal, especially if you're in a rage.